What the problem is, if George W. Bush were to win Ohio, let's make Ohio red, that is going to put George Bush just 20 votes away from the presidency. If you assume that Senator Kerry wins these upper Midwest states and Iowa that Al Gore won closely, let's give Michigan to Kerry. Let's turn that blue. Any minute now. Okay. Let's give Wisconsin to Kerry, even though that state's close. Let's give Minnesota to Kerry. I'm only doing this because these are the states Al Gore carried. Please do not email or write. And let's make Iowa a Kerry state, as it was a Gore state. Okay? Okay, now, what are you left with? You are left with 4 states, 3 states that George Bush won, and 1 state that Al Gore won by 366 votes. If you then give Nevada over here to Bush, make that red, and Colorado, with its 9 electoral votes, all of which will go to Bush because that amendment to split it was defeated, and Arizona to George Bush, here's what you get. You get a Bush presidency, even if Kerry carries New Mexico. So this is why the state of Ohio now becomes the most crucial state of all. Remember, these are not projections. If you put Ohio blue, John Kerry's the president. We all said at the outset that Ohio might be the new Florida, the one we'll be waiting all night to see. If this holds,
it needs a miracle.
John Kerry is the next president of the United States with Ohio, George Bush is it without. And you still have 1 electoral vote in Maine, which in some scenarios could tip the whole thing if George Bush wins it. This is an exercise, not a projection. But you ought to know why the pros are looking at this map the way they are. Ohio still becomes the key, I think. And right now, John Kerry is running behind in Ohio. It all depends where the rest of the votes are coming from, Wolf.
All right, Jeff Greenfield with an analysis of the possibilities, although we're not projecting those by any means. Once again, right now, we've projected 197 for Bush, 188 for Kerry, 152 electoral votes still at play. Karen Hughes has been a senior advisor to the President of the United States. She's in Washington. She's joining us now live. And let's talk to Karen a little bit. There you are at Bush Cheney campaign headquarters at the Reagan Center in Washington. Give us your bottom line assessment of Ohio. Jeff Greenfield just saying that state is so critical, as you well know.
It's very important, Wolf, and it's important that it's not the only path to victory, but we believe we can carry it and re-elect President Bush. Right before I came over to this building, I was at the White House, and Karl Rove and a number of his staff members have been analyzing and talking with county chairmen throughout the state, and they were very optimistic about Ohio. It is close, but we feel that we're outperforming in key areas, that we are doing better than expected in several Democratic areas, that we are carrying some swing counties in the areas around Columbus, and that we've had a big turnout in our Republican base areas. And so we're feeling good about Ohio. And of course, if we do carry Ohio on top of Florida, which I don't know if your network has projected, but several networks have now projected that Florida is in the win column, that would add up to a re-election for President Bush, which we're very excited about.
Karen Hughes, stand by for a moment. We have not yet projected Florida, but we are ready to project here at CNN another state for the President of the United States, Arizona. We can now project will go for the President with those 10 electoral votes. Another win for the President in Arizona. Let's get back for a moment to Ohio. If Kerry were to carry Ohio, Karen Hughes, how does the President reach 270?
Well, there are a number of other options, Wolf. There are a couple of combinations of, say, Wisconsin and Iowa, and several other states that are still in play where we are. I think last time I saw the numbers, I believe we were leading slightly in Wisconsin. I have a great feeling about Wisconsin. We spent a lot of time there on bus tours, and I remember the people of Wisconsin coming out in their lawn chairs and sitting on their front lawns and making handmade signs for the president as he drove by. And so it felt like a state that would go for President Bush, even though it went for Vice President Gore in 2000. A number of those states that we're talking about, Wisconsin and Iowa and Michigan, are states that went for Vice President Gore last time, and we think potentially could go for President Bush this time. And there are a number of combinations. New Mexico is another state that we visited yesterday during the final day of campaigning, that we felt that we came very close in 2000, and we think that the president could carry it again this time.
Karen, it's Larry King. How you doing?
Hi, Larry. Good to see you.
If
Not to
President
see
Bush,
you, but good to hear you.
if President Bush does win, and it's obviously very close in a divided nation, can he bring this country together?
Larry, I know he will work very hard to do that. I imagine one of the first things he would say is that he understands that he would be president of all Americans, even those who did not vote for him. I think a second term would bring a renewed commitment to reach out. You know, I remember when we first came to Washington, the president worked very hard. He reached out to Democrats. We had a number of Democrats to the White House. He worked with Democratic leaders like Ted Kennedy on the education reform bill. And so I think with a new term, the president will make a renewed commitment to do that. I know that he worries about the very polarized partisan atmosphere in Washington. He had a tradition as governor of Texas of working very closely with Democrats to get things done. And so I expect that he will bring a renewed effort to do that to a second term.
And were Senator Kerry to win, would he join with him in trying to help him unify?
Well, I'm sure that should that happen, I'm not really willing to concede that that's going to happen because I don't expect it will. But I've known the president, as you know, Larry, for a long time. He is a very gracious person, and of course he would want to bring this country together and do what's right for our country.
All right, Karen Hughes, stand by for a minute. CNN is now ready to make another projection. CNN can now project that the President of the United States will carry the state of Florida and its 27 electoral votes. CNN projecting another win for the President in Florida. Those 27 electoral votes. Karen Hughes, looking mighty good to you, I'm sure, right now.
That brings a big smile to my face, and I know Wolf and Larry, we talked several times during those excruciating 36 days last time. It's nice to know we won't be going through that again, that Florida is now in the President Bush column.
And with the race for the White House with Florida, our projection now going for the president has 234 electoral votes. John Kerry has 188 electoral votes, 270 needed to be elected President of the United States. How's the president doing? I know that earlier in the day, Karen, when those exit polls were coming out, we never reported any of those exit polls here on CNN, but word spreads pretty quickly. It seemed those exit polls seemed to show a slight tilt in favor of John Kerry. What was the mood at the White House among the president's team and the president himself when you got those results?
Well, Wolf, we were actually coming right into Washington on Air Force One as we got the first exit polls. Karl Rove got them over the telephone, and we were landing at Andrews Air Force Base, and the president was standing there watching over his shoulder as he was writing them down. And he looked at me and he said, "I'm surprised." And he said, "But it is what it is." I mean, he was very sanguine about it. I don't think he completely believed them because we had felt very upbeat going into this election. He had felt a great intensity and enthusiasm among voters across the country. And so as we looked at them more and more throughout the afternoon, I think we began being very suspicious about some of them because there were some very odd things. For example, in the state of Virginia and North Carolina, they showed a very close race, and it has subsequently turned out that President Bush won both those states as expected very handily. And so we thought there were some problems with those early polls, but he was very sanguine about it. He has absolute confidence in the people of America, and he will trust their judgment.
Karen Hughes, as usual, thanks very much for spending a few moments with us. Your supporters behind you they look like they're pretty happy. We'll see if it stays like that. The night is still young. We'll see what happens in Ohio and those other upper Midwestern states. We'll get back to you, Karen. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much.
Let's bring over John King and Candy Crowley and get some reporting from both of them. I'll go to John first. Karen Hughes sounding pretty upbeat right now. John, what are you hearing?
Well, Wolf, it's safe to say that President Bush loves his brother Jeb, but perhaps loves him a little bit more tonight. Florida, of course, decided by that 537 votes, I believe it was. Last time it was the state that took this election to the Supreme Court. Mr. Bush knew he needed it this time. His campaign always said, oh, we can win without Florida. They knew they needed it. They know they need Ohio. That is now the central focus for the rest of this night, or at least the next few hours. But the president, much more confident now. They invested a lot of time in Florida. History might record those hurricanes as a potential deciding factor in the race for Florida this time. The campaign was essentially suspended for a while. Governor Bush told President Bush, don't come here, we have to deal with the hurricanes. But Governor Bush's approval ratings went up in that period of time. Most here at the White House think the president fought pretty well, but that his brother's popularity and his brother's advice and his brother's effort helped deliver the state this time by a bigger margin.
It looks like 100,000 votes separating Kerry and Bush in Ohio, with about 75% of the precincts reporting John. Karen Hughes still thinks even if the president were to lose Ohio, there's a way he could get to 270. Is that realistic, though?
It is a realistic strategy, but look, no Republican has ever won the White House without winning Ohio. That is a cliche. We repeat it a lot, but it also happens to be true. They've always said yes, Wisconsin and Iowa. If you look at the voting returns coming in right now, the latest I brought up a few minutes ago, I believe Senator Kerry has a narrow lead in both states. That doesn't say much. There's still a lot of precincts to count there. It is possible the president could win Wisconsin and Iowa. So yes, they have a backup plan if they have to defy history, but Wolf, they don't want to have to do that. They do not want to put that backup plan to the test. And again, a lot of polls left open in Ohio because the lines were so long. Both campaigns have people driving around and looking at who's in the line and then reporting back saying whether they think things are bad in this precinct, not so bad in that precinct. The Bush team is saying their reports are encouraging. They believe they will eke Ohio out, but they're a bit nervous. The turnout operation in Pennsylvania was run by the same people who are running the Democratic turnout operation in Ohio. In Pennsylvania, the Democrats scored a huge success. That's why the Republicans are still a bit nervous about Ohio.
John King, thanks very much. I suspect that John Kerry is pretty nervous about Ohio as well. Candy Crowley is in Boston over at the Kerry campaign headquarters. How nervous are they, Candy?
Well, look, they say, you know, after Florida fell, it's a lot tougher right now looking than it did before Florida fell. They still believe that their votes are not in Ohio. Now, I get pushback on that when I talk to people on the Republican side, and they say that's baloney. We have, in fact, the urban vote, which is largely Democratic, has already been counted largely in Ohio. Obviously, this is where the battle is going. Obviously, so much depends. They believe that John Kerry's candidacy depends on Ohio. It gets so difficult after that, particularly when you look at New Mexico, a former Gore state, which, again, the last I looked was up a couple of percentage points for President Bush. So they obviously know this is now a tougher hill to climb, and they are looking very forward to having Ohio be called for Kerry.
Let's see if that happens. Candy Crowley in Boston. We'll get back to you. Judy Woodruff's over at the CNN Election Analysis Center. We projected a win for the president in Florida. How did we do that, Judy?
Well, you can't say we weren't cautious, Wolf, because we've waited until now 98% of the vote is in and counted in Florida. 94% of the precincts, I'm told 98% of the vote. There is a spread of, I'm told, it's 51.9% for George W. Bush, the President Bush, to 47.3% for John Kerry. The bottom line is, Wolf, that the possibility of an error is now so small. The number of ballots that are out, 500,000. In order for John Kerry to overtake President Bush, he would have to win something like 80% of those outstanding ballots, and they don't believe that's statistically possible. There clearly are some ballots still out, but they don't think it can change the results there. Now, just quickly, Wolf, Ohio is a different story. There are provisional and absentee ballots outstanding in Ohio that could make a difference, and so that one is still very much out, and we're not ready to call that.
Ohio still very much in play. Thanks very much, Judy. We'll get back to you. Barack Obama is going to be the next United States Senator from Illinois. He's joining us now live from Illinois. Congratulations, Mr. Obama. Thanks very much for joining us. It's a sweet win for you, but what about the President of the United States? What do you sense is happening across the country?
Well, once again, we've got an extraordinarily close election, Wolf, and I think that it's going to take a little bit of time to sort out. Obviously, Ohio is important. I think that we all knew that this was going to be a nail-biter. It is, and you know, I am still confident that John Kerry can pull this out. This politics is a team sport, not an individual sport, and so although my victory obviously is extraordinarily gratifying, I'm still looking nationally to see what's going to happen, because that'll have an impact on my constituents here in Illinois.
Barack, that's Larry King. What committees would you like to serve on?
Well, you know, a lot of it's going to depend on who's the president and who's controlling the majority, because I think that will dictate what seats are open. I know that I would like to have a voice on those committees that allow me to do something concrete on health care and jobs, two of the primary issues here in Illinois. And I would like to obviously have some voice in what is going to be a continuing challenge, and that is our foreign policy and how we shape our role in the world during this period when we're still fighting terrorism. So, but it's a little premature to find out. I'm going to be the junior guy coming in, and I think that I'm going to have to talk to a lot of people before I make those determinations.
You think the country's going to come together?
You know, I think whoever is in power is going to be